What's your vision for the future career tech education?
I think we're on that projection as we're talking about the career connected learning. And really, I see that as being a partnership, right? Where it's not just this is in the school or this is in industry, that it is truly one. When we see career technical education, it is truly a partnership of, it's not just a teacher teaching that, it is really driven by industry and that we're working together to add value to one another. And it's not siloed out. It's not siloed out from the school and different classes as well, to be able to really ignite where we're going with society and the ability that we have as humans and be able to connect with each other and the tools that we have access to really ignite that and to be able to add value to one another, but also society and industry as a whole. And it's leaders like you that make it happen, right? So I'm excited to be able to see that, appreciate the work that you're doing, just being able to connect everyone. That's the power of what's starting to happen. And I see that just going forward. When we work together, we're better together, right? And it's not me versus you or this person or this industry versus this. We're in this together, right? No matter what industry sector we're in, what school, location, etc. We have opportunities that can be global, and let's connect and be able to do that.
You are listening to the Global CTE podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisom.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Global CTE podcast. I am your host, Sylvester Chisom. This is the place where we like to wrap a blanket of goodwill around our career tech community and highlight the best, the brightest, the movers, the shakers, and the innovators. Today is no different. I have my good friend, Jordan Menning, here today on the show. Now, let me tell you about Jordan. Jordan is an influential educational leader and entrepreneur, deeply committed to enhancing PK through 12 education through authentic learning experiences. Jordan serves as the Future Ready Coordinator and Director of Siouxland CAPS in Northwest Iowa, where he leads initiatives to prepare students for the demands of the future workforce. With a rich background in teaching ELA, math, and science, Jordan has also excelled as an instructional coach, adjunct professor, and a national trainer specializing in project-based learning. Additionally, he supports organizations and schools nationwide through his own consulting business. Jordan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really excited to be on.
Man, listen, I'm excited to talk to you. Our pre-show conversation was amazing. Your CAPS connections, salute to Corey and the gang. Like, we have a lot to break down here. Mentoring, we're going to really dive deep into it today. But before we go too far, Jordan, what's your origin story, man? How do you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back starting in high school. I had an amazing opportunity to work with a sixth grade boy named Brandon. And at that time, I was really debating, do I go into education? Do I go into engineering? I liked both fields. But one day I got to sit down with Brandon. Actually, it was focused on, I was supposed to help him prep for a spelling test. And we did some prep for a spelling test. But when I sat down with Brandon, I just saw this young man that was full of potential. And I thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity to get to connect with someone for future generations. And what does that look like? And that really drove me into education and got me where I am today. I connect with Brandon every once in a while. And the other day, I just sent him a text and said, hey, Brandon, I'm just so thankful I got the opportunity to connect with you when you were in sixth grade. You definitely changed the projection on what I was going to do and really set me in a path that, hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be able to impact future generations. So that led me into being a teacher and educator. Got to do that for a while, moved into the consulting role, as you mentioned, working with CAPS now and doing a lot of different things in the education space. But that's really where I came from, being able to have that experience and seeing the power of being able to connect with future generations, young people, and really has launched into what does it mean to be a mentor and those opportunities, and how can we take advantage of our connections with each other throughout education?
That's such an amazing story. And I love it for so many different reasons. I'm thinking like everyone who's listening and watching this is like, even you and myself, we're trying to create those Jordan high school, Brandon sixth grade moments that shows high school Jordan, you found yourself in the work, like this is who I am. So let me lock in on this. Was there a program? Was that a program you were in? Like, how do you even end up getting connected with Brandon?
Right. Yeah. So in high school, there was a mentoring program got put in place, and every once in a while, I think it was maybe once a month, we got together as high school kids, talk about work with a coach or a teacher that said, hey, what does it look like to be a mentor? What are things that you want to do? Talk about conversations that really help people. And that really launched that. But I see that throughout my work all the time, right? Where we can either have a specific program put in place and we can be intentional about it. Also, it can happen naturally, right? With just our mindset of, hey, I get to impact and other people get to impact me on a daily basis, right? So whether we're an official mentor or we have that title, or we know that we just have an impact and we want to learn more about each other. We want to respect each other. We want to be able to support one another. So whether it's just conversation based on nothing that was planned, or we actually have a structure put in place in our school, in our community, that we're going to learn how to support each other and what that looks like. So that was a program that, hey, we had an opportunity to, as high school kids, be involved in lots of different opportunities. And the focus was, we're role models to younger kids. And what do we do? How do we act? How do we carry ourselves? And what does that mean?
I like that. I like that you're highlighting that informal part. Like, yes, there can be some formal program, but just recognizing that we have that opportunity with the students that we come into contact with, really in any capacity, to be a part of their support system. That's really powerful. How does that, I'm curious, how does that mentoring work show up in your work as the director of Siouxland CAPS?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So seen with the CAPS network, they do an amazing job. They've set up just so many opportunities throughout the country and connecting with industry professionals, right? I know Corey's talked about that. You see that at Blue Valley. Ethan in Cedar Falls CAPS, he's done an amazing job with that, of how do we connect our young folks to professionals, right? And maybe that's really focused in a CTE area, or maybe that's really focused in, hey, what a CAPS associate wants to go into for a career. Or maybe it's just, hey, we're connecting our high school associates with professionals in the industry, maybe to just talk about life, right? Share where you've been in life. We know there's going to be ups and downs, no matter who you are, where you're from. You're going to have ups and downs in your lives. And how have you been able to navigate those throughout your life? So I've seen that play a huge role, especially in CAPS. We talk about that all the time, of how can we connect with industry partners? How can we connect with people in the community, leaders in the community? What's your success story? What's maybe the story where you failed, but from that failure, you've failed forward and you've been successful because of those things. I think we have an amazing opportunity as educators to be able to share those stories with kids, right? Whether they're high school, middle school, elementary, to give them perception and know that, hey, life isn't always perfect. Me as a teacher, I was not always perfect, right? There's no necessarily one thing that sets you up for success, besides maybe being able to persist and be able to understand that, hey, there's going to be ups and downs, and how do I navigate through that?
That's such a great answer. You have me thinking. I've had like so many thoughts on what you said. I'm curious, for someone who is listening though, bringing in, I love that about CAPS, getting our students, one, out of the classroom, connecting them with professionals. if someone's listening, I'm curious, your best piece of advice around bringing industry or connecting industry with your students. Like, give me something tactical there. Like, how do you go about that process?
Right. Yeah. Number one, I think the biggest barrier I see is just being willing to reach out. Industry wants to partner. So reach out to whoever's in your community, or if you have some connections, right? Build on those connections that you have, or the people around you in your network, those connections. As I'm learning more and more, there's so many connections out there, and oftentimes we just don't take advantage of those. But number one is know that 99% of people in the industry want to connect with you because they know that's their future workforce, right? So have that confidence of knowing, hey, people on the other side of the table, they're most likely wanting to connect. They're willing to share their story. So just take that leap and connect with them, right? And then just know that it's organic. We want it to be organic. We don't want necessarily something that is, hey, my life's been perfect, or everything in our business has always been perfect. Share with us. How have you grown? Where have you found success, and be able to do that? So bringing in those partners or going to them and knowing that, hey, usually they want to partner as well. So having that confidence is what I've found is being huge, because often in education, as a teacher, you're not necessarily prepared for that, right? That's not something you're often taught in your undergrad of, hey, how do you connect with business partners, or how do you do this? So that's something we hear more and more. And it's really exciting.
Yeah. Just reach out. Just reach out. Like don't make it hard. It's like, who's in your personal network, and be okay with possibly a little rejection, but you may be surprised. Like you said, a lot of yeses are going to be coming your way because industry recognizes that, like, no, this is our future workforce. We need to get involved. We need to be there and support education in that way, for sure. For sure.
Right. And I think also with that reaching out is making sure to validate and show, like, hey, we respect you as an industry partner. We value you, and we want your feedback. Right. So in that invitation to them, it's really important to say, hey, we value you. We value your input. We value connecting with you. Would you be willing to do this? Right. And it doesn't have to be, well, it's just this way we can partner, right? It might be, hey, we're going to Zoom you in, or hey, if you can come in person, or maybe you can meet with a small group of us. Maybe it's the tour, or whatever it is. There's lots of different ways to connect. But let that ball start rolling and seeing what's going to be most beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, I love it. I know you have one, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Paint me a picture of a success story, industry partner, student, or a group of students transformed or working on a cool project or something from your network.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We got a few I'm thinking of right off the top, but I think of a lot of ours focusing on the impact that it's made with the local community. There was one where there were CAPS associates partnered with our hospital and community, right? They needed some promotion done with the stuff that they're doing, and being able to see that has been an awesome connection to the community and a value add to the community around some of the exercise equipment, outdoor stuff that they were doing around a pond, and being able to really promote that stuff and do some of the work that maybe wouldn't have got done, or to the level of what they were thinking was going to happen. So being able to connect with those partners. Another instance is we have a program at our local high school that they're building houses now, right? Because they've partnered with local industry in the CTE realm. They're bringing in electricians to be mentors. They're bringing in plumbers. They're doing all these different types of things to actually building a house, a structure that people can buy. Right. And so, wow, what a powerful connection that is of all these employers know that, hey, these are kids that are probably going to be working for us in a year or two. They've experienced the process from building a house from the ground up.
That gets me so excited when I have people on the pod who tell those stories, man, like who make you make it real for the students, and they can find themselves, they can see themselves in the work, because it's like we want our young people to be successful, but that exploration and exposure early and often and going deep, like it makes it a lot easier for them to see themselves in that work. So hats off to those teachers leading that work.
And I think in that realm too, and what we see in CAPS, what we see with these educators, schools that are making this jump to really making their work authentic, the kids are seeing relevance, right? They see purpose. Our young people want to make an impact in society. And so when you're partnering with industry, when you're having mentors set up for them, they actually see this is things in the real world that is going to make a difference. It's not something that I'm just doing this because the teacher says it, or I'm just doing this because it's part of the course. We're actually making an impact, right? You're building a house, you're doing something for your community, you're doing something for a business partner in industry, right? So when they can see that, feel that, and know that they're making that difference, that's huge.
Yeah. That's major. That's major, Jordan. With that said, I want to stay on that thought there. For any educators listening, what advice would you say, or what would you have? How can educators help to ignite kids' passion and their purpose?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the young man I got to sit with when he was a sixth grader, Brandon. When I met with him, I didn't see him as, hey, I get to go meet with a kid and I just got to help him with a spelling test, right? Or I got to help him prep for a spelling test. When I sat with him, I saw a young man that was full of potential, that he's going to do great things, right? And when we have that mindset as an educator, no matter what kids walk through our doors, when we can see their potential, and when we say, hey, no matter who it is, that they're full of greatness, I'm excited to just be a seed in their life or launching point, right? That's when we can start igniting that passion. When we get to know them, hey, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Right? Maybe they've never thought about that, or maybe they think they got that all figured out, and we can start digging into it. We can provide experiences that say, hey, you're excited about this. You want to go into this work. Let's get you some experience into that, right? Maybe it is through our classwork, but we're going to provide opportunity, career connections to be able to do that. Or maybe we're looking at a different route and saying, hey, this kid has no idea. Maybe they're lacking, they haven't found their passion, or they just don't know where they're going to go next. They have so many other things going on in their lives. Let's just start it breaking that down and be simple and listen to them. Right? What does that look like? And that's where the power I've found as people in my life that I consider mentors, even though they weren't in a formal mentor role, but they were an educator and they were willing to listen and support me throughout my journey, no matter where I was at. So that, I think what I've seen is, hey, when we can continue to tell kids, you have a ton of potential. You have skills that you have no idea that you have. You have ideas. You have a passion in you that you're maybe not aware of. How do we continue to build that and ignite that, right? So I think it's just that mindset of getting into, hey, I'm not looking at this kid as a 4.0 kid. I'm not looking at this kid as he or she has behaviors, right? I'm looking at this kid as they got potential. Every one of these students that I come in contact with have a ton of potential. How do I ignite that?
Man, you're getting me so excited and pumped up over here. I see why schools nationwide are bringing you in. I'm curious, Jordan, for a leader who's listening and they're like, okay, Jordan, yeah, I hear what you're saying. How do I get that mindset to flow from the top? Yes, as the leader, I have that mindset. I believe that we should be igniting passion and purpose. But how do I get that to trickle down to my leaders in the schools, in the classrooms, the ones with direct contact with the kids and the parents?
Right. Absolutely. Well, the first thing is to involve them in the conversation, right? As a leader, it's not something that you can just push on someone and say, hey, you got to have this mindset, but really truly believing in them and starting as the leader, I need to be involved and I need to see what impact they're making. And so then I can remind them, hey, I was in your class the other day and I saw this, or, hey, I've heard this kid graduated. They're connecting to that, right? When I'm able to support my staff in a way that I want my educators to support their students, that's where it needs to start. So as an educator, I need to continue to remind you and have those conversations. Maybe my teachers aren't aware of that's actually happening. Maybe that impact is right there in front of them, but they are not recognizing it. So step one, we always talk about how do we involve our staff in these conversations? Number two, how do we have them recognize the impact that they're making? Sometimes it is hard though, right? Because sometimes we might not see that impact. A couple of years ago, I had a high school kid who was helping me. I was blowing insulation in my attic. And we were wrapping things up, putting stuff back on the trailer. And he said, or he rolled up the extension cord really nicely. He was picking up everything. I'm like, wow, where'd you learn that? Like, where'd you develop these skills? He's like, oh man, my high school teacher, my shop teacher, he does an amazing job. Like he shows us this, but he also shows us the value. And he's like, he kind of kicked my butt a little bit as a teacher, saying like, you don't just throw things on the floor, right? You got to wrap this stuff up. And when I I connected with that teacher and I said, hey, so-and-so was working with me last Saturday and he talked about this stuff. And I was so impressed. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. He didn't get to see that, right? But if I wouldn't have shared that with him, he wouldn't have known about it. And so as a leader, I need to be aware of these things that are happening. And as leaders, you get a ton of stuff thrown at you, right? And a lot of times it's things that are not as exciting to deal with or things that maybe are negative. But how can you continue to look at the light and look at the positive of what's actually happening? And when that starts rolling, then that mind shift starts happening of, whoa, in my class, something that I would have just skimmed over that I didn't think was a big deal was a positive moment. Now I can highlight that, right? When all of a sudden a kid did something little that was positive, I'm going to highlight that. And we're just going to keep that ball rolling to know that, hey, we're building an environment to support each other.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. And I'm grateful you had the foresight and thoughtfulness to take that moment and not just keep it, but to share it back with that educator, because you're right. Like you're touching lives. Like for anyone, listen, it's like you're doing the work, but you're right. You don't always hear that little nugget of just someone was wrapping up the cords in a way with the level of professionalism that came from your classroom, man. That, like, I know that had to make that educator feel good. No, it did.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's what we find. And we talk about different structures that you can put in place or different things, right? Hey, staff meeting, we're going to start with 3 moments of impact that you've had or moments of impact I've seen. Like we can get down to a lot of those things. And that's where we start getting into the logistical pieces of, hey, what makes sense? But at the end of the day, it's all those little things that add up. If we're trying to look for just one big moment, one big shining star all the time, we're missing all the opportunities right in front of us. So that's where it's really important. That's where leaders and schools have said, whoa, hey, we need to take a step back, and we're trying to reach for this, but we have all this stuff already happening. That's great things that we can lean on and that we need to really build upon rather than try and create a whole new structure, a whole new system, right? We need to look at those things and see what we're already doing that's making a huge impact and telling that's so true, man. And I was just working with on a consulting thing with the school system and saying something very similar. Sometimes you overlook the valuable assets that are right in front of you
that you could double down on or reinforce or elevate, or, just put a little more money behind something that's already going, a little more fuel to the fire of something that's already working? Like, I think that's a great thing for everyone to take a look at and say, well, let's just look around us and try to have new eyes and fresh eyes and say, man, this person's a rock star. Like, well, when's the last time you've told them,
right,
that you said that to them? Like, like, when's the last time you offered that praise to your team, or the only time they hear from you is if it's something negative, something's gone wrong, then we hear from you. So, Jordan, I want to switch it up and go back to maybe young Jordan. I know you were telling me in the pre-show about you may have been the man around the high school with sports, but I'm curious, like, talk to me about your role models or your mentors that had an impact on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this dawned on me the other day. I'm sitting with our middle daughter doing some sewing, and I'm like, wow, how impactful was it that I had this opportunity in a family and consumer science class to be able to learn how to sew? And then I look back a couple of weeks ago, my hometown newspaper wrote an article about me, and the headline was starting in over 200 varsity events in high school. So I was blessed with being able to play sports in high school, being able to have some success there. But as I was looking at that, they asked, hey, who are your role models growing up? Wanted to kind of go back in time, right? And being from Minnesota, being a Minnesota Vikings fan, I absolutely loved Chris Carter. If I could catch a ball like Chris Carter, if I could sack a quarterback like John Randall, man, those guys I absolutely loved. But as I thought about it, it really came down to who are my role models, who are my mentors, the people that made a huge impact in my life. And you read that story, and it was really in the teacher that was my family and consumer science teacher, right? She set me up for success on being able to speak to people, being able to talk at events, right? Through FCCLA, being able to have that opportunity. And oftentimes I don't think we think about those connections, right? A lot of people saw me as being a high school kid that was just highly involved in sports. But if I tell that story about being able to learn how to sew, being able, what connections I had in being able to publicly speak, no one would have made that connection, right? And I think that is something that we talked about throughout here on those little things make a huge impact. And I credit her a huge success onto where I'm at today. There's no way I'd be where I am today if I didn't have that experience of being able to learn how to sew, being able to feel comfortable talking to others through those experiences, right? So I credit her a ton on being willing to, hey, take this guy that's big time into sports, and guess what? He's also going to learn how to sew and making it enjoyable. So thinking about that mentorship, and I know she wasn't deemed my mentor, but wow, what an impact she had in my life to project me, not to just be successful in high school, but for life and being able to do that. So, yeah, I just had to laugh when I looked back at that story, and I thought about when they asked me, who are my role models, who was influential in my life? We look at those teachers, those educators, and think it wasn't necessarily one core content area or someone that did that, but setting me up for success in that. Also an educator, coach that was willing to say, hey, Jordan, you have an opportunity to impact younger kids. I want to make sure that you understand and see that you can have that impact, right? So what does that look like? Talked about the mentoring with Brandon, being able to do that. So, yeah, we continue to look at those small, impactful moments that make a huge impact later in life.
Like, wow, Jordan, that's such a great story. And then you're able to have fast forward to today and have that great connection with your daughter with the sewing because of that mentor that you had. I want to move it to project-based learning, because I know that's also layered in here. Everything you have talked about today has been some experience, some project, from the sewing to the construction. And I know that's part of your zone of expertise. Talk to me about, like, what are you seeing at the forefront of project-based learning? Like, what has your attention in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. The career connected piece is huge, right? Being able to see that in the project-based learning realm. Terms get thrown out all the time, whether it's project-based learning, career connected learning, all these different pieces, right? But really in that project-based learning is when we're looking at relevance. How is what we're doing relevant, and how can I show what I've learned? So through that project, whatever it is, I'm showing that I'm able to understand this and apply what I've learned. As we know from brain research, there's a difference between learning and remembering, right? We want kids to learn, but we also want them to remember what they've learned. If we're just trying to have them learn something but not remember it, what's the point? If they can't remember it a week later, if they can't remember it a year later, if they can't apply that, then what are we doing, right? It makes sense that we need to focus on learning and remembering. And how do we create that atmosphere? How do we create those opportunities? Project-based learning is an awesome way to go, an avenue to be able to support students being able to apply what they've learned, or being able to learn through an application process, meaning going to develop a product, right, through a process of learning to be able to show, hey, this is what I understand. This is what I know. Here's the skills that I have to be able to do that. That can be done in a CTE realm. That can be done in a science classroom. That can be done in really any setting. And what's really exciting is we see student engagement going up, right? When we're giving students more voice and choice to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. This is how I can show you what I know and what I've learned, or what I'm learning and the skills I have. Kids absolutely love it. Adults love it, right? When we're working with adults and going through project-based learning or talking about career-connected learning, adults are loving the process too. They feel stake in the game when that's happening too. So when that transitions right through to the adults and to the kids, it's a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Talk to me about, because I know we have a lot of CAPS listeners here. Talk to me about how to elevate the project-based learning in your CAPS program. What do you
Absolutely. So again, going back to connecting with business partners, we want projects that are going to add value to stakeholders. So when we're connecting, whether it's local or national, when we have a business or organization that says, hey, we got a project or a problem, we'd love for you to be able to help us solve this or develop something for us. That's when we bring the level of authenticity to its highest. That's when we see project-based learning rising to another level, right? Because those kids are actually adding value to the business, organization, community to solve a real world problem. And it's not necessarily just something that's hypothetical, is not going to add value. When they're having to meet with clients and say, hey, here is what we're doing. Here's how we're adding value. What's your thinking around this? We're getting feedback from clients on, yep, I like this. No, I don't like this. Whoa, what are you thinking? Hey, and then they can listen as well to be able to have that dialogue and that feedback. The durable skills that kids are gaining is so powerful, right? Through that process of really authentic project-based learning. What we're seeing, what's happening throughout the work being done in CAPS is so powerful. And I mentioned, the durable skills, the work that America succeeds, we see that they have evidence, right, of 90 million job postings, and here's what employers are looking for. Well, let's meet that need. Let's rise to that occasion. And what I've seen is associates do that. Our high school kids do that. When they're given the opportunity to say, hey, you got to deliver for a client, they're all in. They go for it and they do it. And a lot of times they'll go above the expectation. And that's a lot of the feedback that we've been getting of, wow, there's so much potential there. And it goes back to exactly what I was talking about when we started, right? When we look at a brand and when we look at these kids, what do we see? Do we put them in a little peg hole and say, well, no, I think they can only achieve this, or I think they can only do this? Or do we say, hey, here's a problem. Here's a situation. What do you got? Let's tackle it.
Oh, man, I love it, Jordan. You're on fire today, brother. You are on fire. Yes. Thank you for bringing that deep connection there with making that link between the project-based learning, industry projects being given to students, and then the clear learning that takes place around the durable skills that are so critical, like you're saying, that critical thinking, teamwork, collaboration, creativity, all those things, big communication, all those things being on display through that project. That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's so fun to see kids just excel and continue to excel, have them be able to learn more about industry, have them learn more about themselves, right? Some skills that maybe they didn't know they had, or a passion that they didn't know that was in them, and they can just excel. It's so fun to see. I mean, being able to do that, and then also hearing from the industry partner, being able to see that value added is so powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last question. I'm gonna let you get out of here. I asked this to all the guests. What's your vision for the future of career tech education?
Yeah, I think we're on that projection as we're talking about the career connected learning, and really I see that as being a partnership, right? Where it's not just this is in the school or this is in industry, that it is truly one. When we see career technical education, it is truly it's not just a teacher teaching that, it is really driven by industry, and that we're working together to add value to one another. And it's not siloed out. It's not siloed out from the school and different classes as well, to be able to really ignite where we're going with society and the ability that we have as humans, and be able to connect with each other and the tools that we have access to really ignite that, and to be able to add value to one another, but also society and industry as a whole.
I love it.
And it's leaders like you that make it happen, right? So I'm excited to be able to see that, appreciate the work that you're doing, just being able to connect everyone. That's the power of what's starting to happen. And I see that just going forward. When we work together, we're better together, right? And it's not me versus you, or this person or this industry versus this. We're in this together, right? No matter what industry sector we're in, what school, location, etc., we have opportunities that can be global, and let's connect and be able to do that.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for saying that. And that's why I created the podcast, because I'm like, I found myself, moving around the country a lot, doing some international work, seeing all these amazing people just crushing it in their silo of their town, their city, their state, and no one knows about it. I'm telling people about it. I'm like, what if I create this space and just share knowledge and lift up and highlight the work of the amazing people I come in contact with on my journey in CTE. And it's been transformational for me in a way that I hadn't even anticipated, Right. It really has. And then the messages I received back when people were like, oh man, like that was so cool. We didn't know about that. We were talking about this in our PD meeting, and I showed this to my superintendent, and it's a clip from people connecting that they never would have knew about each other,
Right. Yes, absolutely. It's powerful. Appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the insight that you gave today. You are truly a thought leader in the space of mentorship and project-based learning. So I'm grateful for you sharing insights with our audience. For those who have listened to this and they want to find a way to connect with you, to learn more about bringing you in for a keynote or workshop or something like that, where should they go, Jordan?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, be a great place. Otherwise, reach out to menonconsulting@gmail.com. I'd love to connect with you and be able to collaborate and see the great things that you're doing and support the work that you have started already.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jordan, for joining us. Thank you for listening. Jordan dropped a lot of gems on mentorship, project-based learning, the CAPS network, and really just being thoughtful about all of those interactions that you have, formal or informal, with our students and educators. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't be selfish. Share it with a friend so we can get this great message out here into the world. And until the next episode, remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.